James Astill is a Washington correspondent for The Economist. James, the president is, of course, closely monitoring these final hearings for his Supreme Court nominee. How do you see it playing out?
Well, I mean, I think, as you just said in your intro, this drama is very live. It seems that the Democrats are very close to, if they haven't already reached the number that they would need to be able to filibuster Judge Gorsuch's appointment. And if they do that, they do so, I think, under a clear threat of the Republicans going nuclear, scrapping that filibuster in Supreme Court judicial appointments. And that opens a whole can of worms, actually, for the Senate in terms of due procedure, certainly when it comes to the next Supreme Court appointment, which may very well be under this president. I think that without the filibuster, the president will be under huge pressure to appoint a more hardline right-winger than Judge Gorsuch is. And of course, this also leaves an open question over the future of the filibuster for legislation, not merely judicial appointments. So we are, I think, on the cusp of a possibly rather historic constitutional moment.
So for those tuning in to the hearings at this very moment, thinking about it for the first time, the nuclear option means that the Republican majority would eliminate the filibuster option and make a simple majority be enough to confirm a Supreme Court justice. Is that it?
That's correct. It would remove, if you like, one of the main normative checks within the Senate to defend the minority party when it comes to its interests in Supreme Court appointments. It's something that has been considered sacred by both parties for a considerable time, and partisanship has in a sense made it even more important because there has been a failure of compromise across the board. So if that filibuster is scrapped for Supreme Court appointments, the minority party, the Democrats now, won't be forever, will have really no defense against the Supreme Court appointment nomination that it doesn't like at all.
Let's move on to President Trump's upcoming meeting this Friday with the Chinese president. It comes after President Trump appeared to send another warning to China, telling the Financial Times, quote, "How do you think the president of China will likely respond to that?"
Well, I think that it's impossible to know the tenor of President Trump's conversations with the Chinese. They come in the context of a great deal of saber rattling from President Trump before his election on the campaign trail. Then, a rather kind of puerile attempt at threatening the Chinese on pain of America abandoning its one China policy, wanted compromises from the Chinese on trade. President Xi Jinping just refused to speak to President Trump after that, shortly after his election. And I think what we've seen is basically compromise on the American part since then. So now President Trump wants to kind of assure Americans that he's still a tough negotiator when it comes to China. We really don't know how serious that is. I think we'll have to see what comes out of these talks.
It's also going to be interesting to see what comes out in the Chinese national media. I remember when Trump first began tweeting about China, the editorial cartoonist in China had quite a good time depicting our president as a cranky toddler. This weekend, moving on, Senator Rand Paul met with President Trump and said that party members are getting closer on a compromise plan to repeal Obamacare, and that he remains very optimistic about that effort. Where can the president realistically go from here to get Obamacare repealed?
Well, what Senator Paul is speaking to is a continued Republican hope that effectively the Freedom Caucus moderates who blocked the bill that would have begun the serious repeal of Obamacare the week before last, that they'll reconsider that opposition and that bill will be reintroduced and passed with no doubt some small face-saving compromises. I think that it's hard to see an alternative to that legislative action at the moment, and I know that, in fact, I've doing a lot of reporting on this on the Hill at the end of last week, that there has been far more pressure on those Freedom Caucus members, on those moderate Republican congressmen to rethink their opposition to that bill than has been in the public domain.
All right, very good. James Astill from The Economist. James, thank you very much.
Pleasure.